Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this analysis of 2021 EOM 3, Endeavour Open Mock Cat 3. Let's start with understanding what the VARC sectional was like. So let me quickly take you through the VARC sectional. Let's look at the various question types. Let's start first with the overall pattern of the sectional. So again, like we've had our previous patterns, this was also based on the 2020 pattern, CAT 2020 verbal sectional, which means this had a total of 26 questions for 40 minutes with four RCs, okay, making for a total of 18 questions, two RCs with 5 questions each, and two RCs with 4 questions each. There were three parajumbles, three summary questions, and two out of context questions. What are we going to regard this sectional as? Considering the length of the RCs, you'd find in comparison that the RCs of this sectional are slightly longer, and the topics that were slightly dense, a couple of them, will want to consider this sectional as a moderate to difficult one. Okay, definitely with some leanings or towards the difficult side in terms of the language used in the RCs. So, what was the first passage? RC1 to do with physics, the theory of the multiverse, a universe that's constantly expanding, and the multiple universes that we are talking about. So, yes, physics, a bit of quantum physics, and therefore slightly heavy language with jargon. So, for a student without a physics background or without a strong comfort with reading of science articles, this might have been a little challenging because the first few paragraphs did involve some close reading. Add to that, it had 615 words and four questions, not five, four questions. You'll find that two of those questions were quite challenging, the two inferences. Other two were okay, could have been done. But the whole idea of this passage was that it's a lengthy one, slightly difficult to read. Okay. What about our next passage, passage 2, to do with science, climate change? So while the idea is a familiar one, the overall idea and the topic is a familiar one to us, this specifically dealt with the details of the decline in Arctic sea cover, that is the ice cover declining, which led to enhanced evaporation, which increased the snowfall occurring in the southern regions. All right, which is very technical. The explanation was very technical, required very close reading. You could not miss out on any details because the moment you missed out, the understanding of the idea would be affected. So in that sense, yes, this was also a slightly heavy reading. What was the length of this passage? 630 words again, 600 plus, which is again a long passage, 5 questions. However, in comparison with the first one, you'll find that some of these questions were much easier. The weaken question was a pretty straightforward one. You could identify the detail that weakens. There were two further application questions, one of which was slightly difficult, the other was moderate. The main idea was a fairly moderate one. One of the inferences was a little challenging, but overall, RC2 would have been good to start with, despite the fact that the initial few paragraphs had to be read carefully. You had to understand what exactly, especially when the various geographic terms are mentioned, and you have details like southwards, increased snowfall southwards, south of this region, and certain names of seas, etc. mentioned. So careful reading was required. But definitely, in comparison with the first one, this would have been a passage open to, open to selection by many, open for selection by many students. Many of you could have taken this easily. What about RC3? Environment, carbon trading mechanism employed by China to curb emissions. And what's the efficacy of this mechanism that they've set up? How efficient is it? Is it going to bring about the expected results? Fairly okay, far better than your previous two RCs. The length is also roughly around 500 words and four questions. Unfortunately, you could have looked forward to more questions here because it was an idea you could relate to easily, fairly structured, moderate to read, And you'll find that 3 questions here are moderate. So between RC1, RC2, RC3, a very good pick in terms of understandability of the ideas as well as the questions would have been RC3. Okay. What about RC4? So philosophy, I guess, for the first time in our EOMs, for the first time in the EOMs that you've seen, not for the first time in our EOMs, a comparison of Ambedkar's, philosophy and Descartian philosophy, Descartes' philosophy, particularly in terms of the rejection of the pre-modern philosophy and the inequality, the idea of inequality in the philosophy of pre-modern times. So how have both of them rejected the idea, the notions of inequality that pre-modern philosophies justified, right? There was also, therefore, the departure between the two. That is, Descartes did a blanket rejection of the idea of inequality and he completely accepted modern ideas, whereas Ambedkar rejected the inequality, but he also looked for, instead of completely accepting modern ideas, he'll also look for alternatives. And the one alternative that he came up with eventually is Buddhism, right? So the passage is fairly structured that way, fairly structured. But because it makes use of philosophical terms and the language is philosophical, it is a little heavy, right? And the length, 735 words, the length makes it a little challenging. You will have to invest more time in reading this. And that's why it's called difficult. The language is not totally abstract. It's not like, pure philosophical language, which can be very challenging. You can still manage this. There's a nice structure to this passage that makes it easier for you to relate to things. But yes, considering the fact that it's lengthy and the subject, whatever said and done, is philosophy, that is why the passage is a little heavy to read. And the questions are also challenging. So if you did not pick this passage because you sense that the subject was philosophy and philosophy is not your cup of tea, then that was a good decision. Because yes, all the questions were inferences, and 4 of those inferences are clearly difficult because there is this clash between 2 options and somewhere you'll get stuck, right? So if you decided to leave out this passage, that would have been a good choice. If you had taken the previous passage, that is the third one and the second one, these 2 passages to go to start with, and then maybe 1 or 2 of you who are comfortable with physics and can read this very easily would have also taken the first passage. So 3 passages, the first 3 is what we'd recommend. What about the other non-RC questions? So the 3 parajumbles should have been taken because at least 2 of them were very easy. The links that you would find in question 20, which talked of the quality of light and poetry, the 3, 2, 1, the first 3 links are so very visible, so very evident. And the fourth sentence automatically falls in place. Likewise, question 21, where you're talking of, Rutger Bregman's book, had very, very visible links. 3 stood out as the starting sentence, and then 4 to the connect with, which refers to this book, and then the last sentence that falls in place. The only slightly difficult one, I really wouldn't call it a very difficult one. This is moderate to difficult because there was that one confusion between 2 sentences. Would you want to start with sentence 3? Would you want to start with sentence 1? Sentence 1 makes a reference to binary tales, how the future of the fantasy sports industry hangs on binary tales. Now, if you didn't understand the binary, the 2 stories or 2 2 narratives that are, presented in the other 2 lines, then you'll think that we have to start with the first one. But the first sentence is actually what comes into place after you understand the 2 sentences, that is the second sentence and the fourth one, that is 2 and 4, which talk of the ban on PUBG. All right. So that's what made this slightly confusing. But overall, parajumbling as an area of questions should have been addressed because definitely something that you would have gained from. So this time the parajumbles were easy. Next, the summary questions overall, I think, can be marked moderate. It wasn't very difficult for you to eliminate the options in question 22. The paragraph was a very brief one, just 80 words. The idea, how presence is more is a little more important in matters of productivity is also well understood. Likewise, Ishiguro's The Buried Giant and its genre, what genre it belongs to, the paragraph is not very difficult to read, but what makes it a little challenging is this clash between two options, because if you miss the detail that this paragraph talks about how it was challenging to classify this, not that it cannot be classified. So instead of taking an extreme stance, what the paragraph is saying is that classifying it is a challenge, right? But that doesn't mean that it cannot be classified. So if you understand that detail, you'll probably get this right. Slightly confusing options. The third paragraph, that is question 24, which spoke of writing Chinese characters and the complexity involved in it, again, wasn't a difficult one, could have been taken very easily. So two moderate summary questions, one slightly difficult one. So maybe if you invested about 1.5 minutes per question here, or maybe 2 minutes for question 23, and 1.5 minutes for 22 and 24, which is a total of 3, 4, 5 to 6 minutes. This would have got you some good rewards. Likewise, an investment of about 5 minutes to 6 minutes, 5 minutes or so in parajumbles also would have got you good rewards. Okay. Finally, is the two questions of out of context. The language was moderate, but maybe you could have avoided this, because though one question is the 26th question, the sentence did stand out, but I'd still say that considering you had 5 sentences to read and 4 sentences to connect, with each other, this would have taken some more time. Question 25 particularly was a difficult one, because every sentence made some reference to ban on plastics, and therefore to figure out which sentence is out of context would have required some more time. Anyone who got into this question might have spent a 2+ minutes here, or a 2.5 minutes, which is really a little more time for this. And still you would, have, there are chances that this would affect your accuracy. 26th was an easier one. You could relate to this, okay? But yes, a little time. This would also take you some 1.5+ minutes, closer to 2 minutes to read and solve. So maybe the out of context could have been avoided, but summary could have been taken up. The parajumbling could have been taken up, and clearly two passages that stand out for any of you who are comfortable with the science and science physics reading. Even the first one could have been managed. This is not difficult for the ones without a science background, can be done. It's just that for people with ease and comfort of understanding of quantum physics, etc., can relate to this easily. For the others, it can just be that wee bit challenging, all right? So how many questions have we marked as easy and moderate and difficult? Let's look at that final table. So this is what it looks like. 2 questions that are easy, 12 questions that are moderate, and another 12 questions that are marked difficult. Some of these difficult questions are actually moderately difficult, all right? We haven't gotten into that fine classification, but yes, in our discussion, we did mention how some of these are actually moderately difficult. So considering that you took the 2 easy ones, you identified the moderate ones and took about 10 or 11 of them, and 4 odd questions of the difficult segment, we are looking at something like 17 to 18 questions for a 98 percentile. And obviously, we always speak of an expected accuracy of 80%. 80% is a fair challenge for verbal. We've said this earlier too, all right? And this is something that you must aspire to achieve. 80% accuracy can only come with sustained practice. Let me use this moment to reach out to all of you, our dear CAT 21 students, that repeated solving of reading of RCs, continuous practice of RCs is an extremely essential thing. Unless you get into repeated practice of RCs, which is very regular, almost on an everyday basis, this skill is bound to be affected. If your reading skill is to remain polished, If your reading momentum is to remain sharp, if your reading understanding is to remain at its best, at its peak, and that's what you need when you're looking at solving 4 RCs in a matter of 40 minutes, you need reading momentum at its peak, your reading concentration at its peak. And if that is to come your way, you need regular practice. It's not that I'm taking this opportunity to say that you haven't been practicing. Let me instead, put this positively and say that you should be practicing. That is one way in which you can reach the right level of efficiency, reading efficiency that is required. So that 80% accuracy, if you are to consistently look forward to an 80+% accuracy in verbal, you need repeated practice, all right? So at an 80% accuracy with 17 to 18 questions attempted, we're looking at something like a score of 41. This is what is pegged for a 98 percentile in this mock. So a score of 46 would fetch you 99 percentile. A score of 57 plus is what is looked at for a 100 percentile. A score of 38 is 95 percentile. A score of 33 is 90 percentile. A score of 30 is 85 percentile. A score of 28 is 80 percentile, right? So this is where we stand with regard to the verbal sectional. I have completed a discussion of this. Let me hand over to my colleagues, Shivam sir or Srinivas sir, to carry forward the DILR discussion and the quant discussion. Over to you, sirs. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, madam. Very good evening, all of you. Here I am with the analysis of EOM 3 QA section. So this is the flow in which we'll be taking up the QA section analysis. We'll be starting with topic distribution. That suggests how many questions were asked from which topic. We'll be following it up with question mapping. We'll try to categorize each and every question in terms of that difficulty level. Either it is easy or it is moderate or it is difficult. I have introduced one more category over here, which is moderate and time consuming ones. Okay. Then we'll discuss the expected attempts. Having done a proper math on easy, moderate and difficult, we'll try to arrive at an expected attempt. And finally, we'll look to see what is the expected score and their percentile equivalence in this particular test. Okay, so let's start with the first point, which is topic distribution. This is how the topic distribution looks like in EOM 3. So you can see there are 4 questions from numbers. There are 3 questions from time and work, 2 questions each from percentage, set theory and circles, and 1 questions literally from every topic, that is profit and loss, average, partnership, time and distance, time and work, progression. I'm sorry, time and work is 3 here. That's the typo here. Okay, time and distance is 1, progression is 1, functions is 1, inequalities 1 question, lines and angles 1 question, triangle 1 question, quads, polygons, special properties, and miscellaneous arithmetic, each carrying a weightage of 1 question. You can see permutation, combination, and probability being absent here, but the rest of the chapters finding sufficient coverage over here. Let's move to the classification of question. I'll first try to look at the set of easy questions. So this was the first question given in the paper, which was based on percentage. So a number was there, which was supposed to be increased by 33.33%, but by mistake, it was decreased by 33.33%. So you have to find out what is the percentage increase now required to get to the original value. So this was a very easy and straightforward question. You just have to take one assumption and find out 2 results, right? One after a 33.33% increase, the other one after 33.33% a decrease. And then you can compare what percentage increase is required to reach the actual value. Another question was based on profit and loss, where an article was sold at 2 different prices. Number 1, you sell it at 2700, you make a profit. And you sell it at 1500, you make a loss, right? So the profit earned when the article is sold at 2700 and the loss incurred when the article is sold at 1500 were in the ratio of 5:7. So you can just make an equation here and find out the cost price. Once you get cost price, you had to find out the selling price required to get 20% profit. Next question, again based on percentage. So there was a sugar solution given, 280 kilo, if I'm not wrong here. Okay, so 280 kilo sugar solution, and that had a concentration of 20%. Now some sugar was added, and we take up the concentration to 30%. So we had to find out the quantity of sugar added in order to reach 30% concentration. Now such kind of questions are easy. There is a set approach. Okay, so how to solve such kind of question? You may please look at our video solutions that will be published in your account after this analysis is released. Okay, so now you can go back to your portal and check the video solution. For every question, you will be finding a link for a video solution. So whatever questions you were not able to solve during the test, I suggest all those questions should be visited again, and you can check out the video solutions. Okay. Next question based on time and work. So this was a straightforward textbook question where the work was done in different parts. That is A, B, and C were the workers. So the first part where A, B, C all are working. And in the second part, C is leaving when he was sure that without me, the rest of the two will be able to finish the work in one day. So we simply had to categorize the total work in two parts, and we finally need to add up the work to equate to the total work. A question based on lines and angles where a simple relationship between a supplement and a complement of an angle was given. That is, supplement is 16 times the complement. So you can straightforward write an equation over here that supplement is what? 180 minus x. That is equal to 16 times the complement, which is 19 minus x, 90 minus x. And you can solve the equation for x. A question based on circle where the length of chord and distance from the center were given. Okay, so if a chord of length of 8 centimeter is lying at a distance of 10, what is the distance at which a chord with length 10 will lie from the center? So it was an application of Pythagoras theorem inside the circle. Coming to the moderate level questions, there was a question based on inequality where it was given that x is greater than 10 and y is less than minus 3. And you had to find out the right option out of the four options given, right? Now the options were suggesting that you had to find out the value of x minus 10y or x plus 10y. There were two kinds of option, okay? And you need to find out the option which was right in the given circumstances. So either x minus 10y will be greater than certain value, or x plus 10y will be greater or less than the certain value. Okay. A question based on miscellaneous arithmetic, a problem based on renting out of car. So there were two different conditions given that either you use it below 8 hours and you incur a given rental, okay, or you might use it for a duration which is more than 8 hours and there was a different rental given there, okay. What you had to do is you have to find out the maximum time for which you can rent a car, and that too you end up paying the least possible amount. So once again, there were a lot of conditions involved, so better you check out the video solution to understand what was the approach taken here. A question based on numbers where we were supposed to find out the maximum value of x minus n. So what is x here? X is a square of a sum of a two-digit number. So let's say you have a two-digit number, you find the sum of digit and you square it. That is what x is, okay? What is n? N is the number itself. And we wanted to find out the maximum value of this. So yes, a very commonsensical approach that if you assume the largest possible two-digit number, which is 99, you have the highest possible sum of digit, which is 9 plus 9, 18, and you have the highest possible square of it, which is 18 square, 324. Okay, so that was the logic here. A question based on partnership where it was given that A invest half of what all the others invest. Now, one thing that you had to understand over here is that when A is investing half of the remaining three, okay, which is B plus C plus D. So automatically you get the ratio of A upon B plus C plus D is equal to 1:2. And therefore, if the ratio of A to others is 1:2, then A is 1/3 out of the total. Now, once you're able to understand that, the question becomes very easy. Okay, so A is 1/3 of others. Similarly, there were two more conditions given, like B was 1/4 of the total and C was 1/5 of the total, right? So if you add these three, 1/3 plus 1/4 plus 1/5, you get the rest of the part, which was the share of D. A question based on numbers where the given binary number, which was 11000011110101, was supposed to be converted from binary to base 8. So there is the proper approach to convert a binary number into base 8. Okay, what you have to do is you have to make pair of 3 digits at a time and start finding out their place values. A question based on weighted average was given where there were three different classes, each having a different average. Now, when A and B are mixed, you get a particular average. So you can find out the ratio of number of students in class A and B using the alligation rule. Same way, when B and C have been mixed, you get some by average, which was given in the question. So once again, by applying the alligation rule, we can find out the ratio of number of students of B is to C. Okay. Then we have to find out the common ratio A is to B is to C. And once we get that, we have to apply the weighted average concept. A question on progression where it was given that S19 is equal to S30. Okay, so that is sum of first 19 terms is equal to sum of first 30 terms. We have to find out the value of 49th term. Okay, so there is a proper concept involved here, right, which will be taught to you during progression. That is when S19 is equal to S30, S of 49 is always 0. But remember, this is S of 49 only, right? Using this S49, we had to derive T49. A simple straightforward question based on logarithm. Such kind of questions are very common. Okay, so you had to assume log x to the base 2 equal to y, and therefore log 2 to the base x is 1 upon y. So you get a quadratic equation. You solve the quadratic equation and you substitute the value of log x to the base 2. And you get two different values of x, which were, I think, 4 and 8. So we had to find out the sum of all possible values, which is 4 plus 8, 12. A question based on, not a question, in fact, a set of two questions was given on set theory, where there were COVID patients, 1023 of them, and these COVID patients were categorized as male and female, old and young, and persons with disease against without disease. Okay, and there was some data given based on which we can draw a Venn diagram. Now, this will take a while to make a Venn diagram, but understand that this is still not time consuming, provided you are getting two questions once you form a Venn diagram. Okay, so forming a diagram might be a challenge over here. You might end up consuming around 3.5 minutes on this. But once the Venn diagram is prepared, you can just take the remaining two questions within next 2 minutes time. Now let's see question mapping of moderate but time consuming questions. So there was a question based on chords and polygons. Once again, a very standard kind of question, right? Where you are cutting a regular octagon from a square. So first you need to take a square sheet of paper, cut four corners of this square, and the resulting is a regular octagon. Okay, so you had to apply 45 45 90 triangle theorem here, and then you have to add all the sides of the octagon as well as the triangles that have been cut to show that it is equal to the length of the square, which was 10. Okay, so once you see how these questions are solved later on, at a later stage, when you come across similar questions, you will be in a position to do these. A question based on distribution of cakes was given, where there were three different flavors of cake: orange, blackcurrant, and chocolate. Okay, their weights were given: 1.2 kg, 2.1 kg, and 1.68 kg. Okay, and these cakes were to be cut into smaller pieces so that each piece will have the same weight. So obviously this is a question based on HCF. Once you find out the HCF of these three fractions, you will get the weight of each piece. Okay, once you divide the total weight with the weight of each piece, you get the number of pieces. Okay, so once you get the number of pieces, you will be able to find out how many guests were present and how many cakes were remaining. A question based on time and work, where this is something unique with respect to time and work over here, because there were two type of grass which were on the field. One is the fixed quantity, the other is the variable quantity, which keeps growing on a daily basis. Okay, so it was given that when you have let's say 12 cows, they will be able to grace the entire field for 6 days. So you have to generate an equation based on that. There was a similar data given. You can generate another equation. By elimination, you will be able to find out the fixed as well as the variable quantity. Once again, there were two questions based on this concept, but I'm not still rating it as either an easy or a moderate one, because this is something unique that you are seeing it for the first time. Okay, so once again, a suggestion, a very useful suggestion: go out, go and check out the video solution. Time and distance, a question based on round trip from Rajkot to Ahmedabad to Baroda to Surat to Mumbai and back to Rajkot. Okay, so this question might take some reading time. It was around 3 to 4 line question, but once you start entering the data in the diagram, the question is not that difficult and it was doable. Just that it might take some time while processing the information. Coming to the question mapping of difficult questions, so there are 5 of them here. Okay, the first one is based on a quadratic function where the maximum value of the quadratic function was given as 8, f4 was given as 16, and f16 was to be calculated. So here the concept of minima is being used, and also the point of minima is the average of fx equal to 0. So two values of fx is equal to 0. Point of minima is the average of that. Apart from that, we also had to locate the minimum point. So there were multiple such concepts involved. Question based on special properties. So this is where you have to assume y and z being equal. Why do we assume y and z to be equal? Because we are trying to maximize x. So y and z need to be minimized, and we need to suppose equal values for them. Okay. So putting y equal to z and substituting those values in the equation, we'll be able to derive a value of x, which was ultimately running into a quadratic equation. A question based on numbers, where we had to find out a remainder when 5 raised to 3456 was divided by 23. Now, let me tell you, this question can be solved using something called Euler's theorem. Okay, so this is something that we'll be learning at an advanced level while we are doing quant marathon, right? So there will be a particular topic called Euler's theorem and the remainder based on Euler's theorem. So this thing will be taught there, right? So don't get surprised that we are not able to solve this question and we don't know this theorem. Just relax. This will be taught to you at an advanced level. A question based on triangle, where we had to find out we had to insert a largest square in a triangle. Okay, and once this largest square is inserted in a triangle, we have to apply similarity to get the value of the side of the x. Once we get the side of the x, we can find out the area of the upper part of the triangle, which was shaded in the diagram. And last question, which was based on circles. So there was an obtuse angle triangle given in the circle, and two of the line segments were perpendicular to each other. Well, this was a simple concept application, but it required some time, or a lot of students might not be able to understand what is exactly given, and they'll not be able to form a diagram maybe with 1 or 2 attempts. Okay, that's why I'm putting it under a difficult question. So this is the question distribution. We tried to categorize the questions as per the difficulty level, and I have tried to attach the logic. Why am I classifying a particular question as an easy one or a moderate one or a difficult one? Okay. Now let's look at the expected attempts based on the discussion of the difficulty level. So this is what we are expecting. There were 6 questions we categorized as easy ones. We expect you to solve bulk of these questions, which is 5 is my expected attempts out of 6. Okay. Moderate questions, again, there were 10 of them. And here again, we are expecting bulk of attempts to be done. Okay. So 8 is an expected attempt over here. From the remaining 2 categories, I'll not be expecting much. From moderate but time consuming, I can expect around 50 to 60% of the questions, whereas from difficult, I can expect around 30 to 40% questions. Okay, so this is how I'm expecting 18 as a good attempts out of 26. And if you maintain 80% accuracy with this 18 attempts, you will get 14 correct, 4 incorrect, and because of that, your expected score should be 38. Okay, this expected score is straight away my 98 percentile. Okay, So look at the detailed chart here. 98 percentile is capped at 38. The calculation I have already explained to you. Okay, if you're aiming for higher like 99 or 100, 99 is available at 41 and 100 is available at 53. But if you are starting out, which most of the students are at this point of time, okay, because we are still in April and we are starting out with our mock test. So a lot of students might not have gotten themselves into this range. Okay, so the very first challenge for you is the bottommost row. Okay, you need to look at 80 percentile and the target score. Okay, so just try and reach this level 19 to 20 marks. So that will get you an entry into this table. Okay, you start from 80, you stabilize over there, and then you set a target at the next level, which is 90 percentile, which is available at 28, and 95 percentile is at 33. Okay, so get an entry into this table. Okay, stabilize your score over there, and then aim for the next target. That's how you have to approach this. So this is it from my end. I'll now hand over to Srinivas sir to take up the DILR section analysis and the overall one.
Thank you, Shivam sir. Sir, you might have to make me a host or co-host.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Hey, hello everyone. So here I am with EOM 3 DILR section analysis. So you would have gone through the verbal and quant, might have gained some good insight into it. So I will take you through this part of the journey. Here we go as we go along. Okay, before let me start with the categorization of your learning. So you might be just a beginner, might have taken this test, or you might be at certain intermediate level of your preparation and could have taken this particular test, or you might be at your advanced stage of your learning and could have attempted this set. So what is in store for each one of us, kind of as we go along, we will look through. So definitely the test taking strategy, that is entering a particular section with certain amount of understanding, would always help, which you also call it as a SWOT analysis, or whichever way you term it. But definitely I'll let know, so you will not get into the test without really understanding yourself at any point in time. You understand a little bit about yourself, and then you kind of make a mental mapping. Should I go for MCQs? Should I not go for non-MCQs? In what type of questions I should do MCQ? In what type I should not do non-MCQ? Am I a DI kind of person, which means good with calculation? I know my percentage calculation, profit, loss, ratios, averages. Therefore, I prefer DI over LR. Or no, I'm good at arrangements, I'm good at distribution, or any of these puzzles, handling the puzzles you are better at. Then naturally, I'll let you know that, okay, you first get into this section and look for those kind of puzzles, right? So therefore, understanding a little bit and then approaching with a little bit of conditioned mind would definitely help, right? Rather than going with completely an open mind, right? Yeah, that because going with a complete open mind without an expectation might not bring the best out of you, right? You need to be flexible, but at the same time, you go with certain expectation and certain understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses. All right. Okay. So let's understand. So also in a given set, you don't have to attempt all the questions. That's very important, because some people, when they get into a particular set, they think, because I understood this particular set, I might want to answer all the questions presented under that particular data set. Not necessarily. Author might have kept one particular question under that set pretty difficult and challenging. It's wise to leave it and move on from there. right? So such decisions would definitely help. Here was the first set. As you enter into this particular set, it was on games and tournaments. There were about 64 teams participating in a knockout tennis tournament. But this is a little unusual in a sense, okay, it's not on the standard format of what you learn. It's little different. Therefore, I would rather say if anybody entered into this particular set, 2 questions could have been done with with greater ease. It could be the 2 theta questions. In fact, those 2 easy questions were of the theta form, right? That was the challenge there. Therefore, there is no reconfirmation as such. When you do the type in the answer type, it is not an MCQ. There were 4 questions here. 2 of them were MCQs and 2 were non-MCQs. In fact, the MCQs were pretty direct and easy questions. Non-MCQs wanted in-depth reasoning, because this was not a conventional, usual games and tournament-based question. This was a little aberration. It was a little exception to it, in the sense there was a little bit of the different thinking or a deeper thinking which was required to handle the other 2 questions. So therefore, I would say that if anybody would have spent about 6 to 8 minutes kind of time and even figured out the first 2 questions in the 6 minutes and made a move from there, would have been a better bet. No, I kind of learned about the games and tournaments. I'm familiar with this. I've solved about dozen sets on games and tournament, or at least half a dozen on games and tournament. Naturally, you might have attempted 1 more question out of 3, or maybe all 4 of them. Right? Depends on what kind of expertise that you have. So will you take this in the first round or second round? Depends on the background. If you are beginning, not too much of idea about this, naturally you would not be considering this in the beginning. You might want to come back in the second round when you attempt it. So what do you mean by the first round? First round questions are those which you feel more confident about attempting, which you feel more confident about getting it, right? Yeah. So you might have read this set, then you would have taken a decision, should I do it now or at a later stage, based on your preparedness to handle the games and tournament based questions. So here was another one, which was not a very traditional kind of question, but yes, okay, this is a kind of questions where where you can use your raw thinking or raw talent and get this done. There was an industry here, there was a factory, and there were about 9 containers. Each container can hold about 100 liters. And there were 4 guys who are operating in 4 different shifts, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, one guy comes at 1 in the afternoon, the other guy comes at 3 in the afternoon, things like that, right? And then they had a peculiar way of filling these containers with 20-liter buckets, right? This was about this particular set. So it wasn't really difficult one. So this, somebody could have handled it with a bit of raw talent as well. Therefore, I put it under the medium level difficulty one. So this could have been taken either in the first round or second round. So based on how confident you feel about these kind of puzzles, right? So good to go in the first round for some people. Some if you feel that no, I'm looking for much more familiar set in the first rounds, might not be a familiar kind of type. So it can be in the second round, but most doable question, right? If you're well recovered before the test and you would have taken this set with a good frame of mind, I'm sure you could have done it in about 7 to 8 kind of minutes, right? You could have done at least 2 or 3 out of 4 questions. See, again, you don't have to do all 4 questions. There might be 1 question which could be a lot trickier. You can leave that. 2 questions were certainly doable. It was just about the other 2 questions which were having a kind of a trick. Otherwise, I'm sure 2 of the questions were kind of well doable. See, if you are choosy, if you can pick those 2 questions in the sets, or if you can pick those 3 questions in the set out of 4 or 5 questions that are given, that's how you kind of accumulate your marks. Just because you get into this set, never think that, okay, I need to solve each one of them, might not be a good thought, right? Yeah. So this was the easiest of all. Those who have done any basics of DI, trust me, this was the most easiest set in this one. But if you say that, hey, I'm not a calculation person, I'm not familiar with the TIs, okay, then it's a different issue. But still, you don't feel it difficult for sure, right? Either you classify it as easy, even if you are not a DI kind of person, you would still say that, okay, this is of the medium level difficulty. Nobody can claim it to be really difficult question because the numbers are only 2-digit numbers, very simple numbers, can be worked with, right? Yeah, of course, there were a couple of trick questions again here, but 2 questions were straightforward and doable. Maybe 3 questions, but there was 1 trick question maybe here and there. But yes, barring that particular question, the rest 3 questions were kind of doable. 2, anybody should have handled it. Already in about 6 minutes time, if you had handled about 3 questions, could have been a good bet, or put about 4 questions, or if you're quite familiar with DI, all 4 were doable in about 8 minutes, right? So that would be a kind of time this set would have taken. I would rather classify this more as an easy set. Okay, and then here was a massive set. Not a difficult one, those who have done enough analytical puzzles of the deeper nature. Distribution type especially, right? This was about mapping the name with the father's name and surname, right? The name had 3 parameters, name followed by father's name followed by surname, and the marks that they have obtained, right? This is what we were trying to map it out here. Sure, it does take time. It might take about a dozen minutes, no doubt, but short you would be getting the answers. The good thing about this particular set was all 6 were theta questions. Therefore, there was a lot of reassurance. I mean, in case you would have got it wrong somewhere, there was you could have quickly gone back and rectified at some point in time. But yes, you take up this kind of sets provided you have the exposure to handle the deeper sets. No, I handled only very superficial ones, then definitely this could have challenged you, right? But not if not. Okay, it was doable in about a dozen odd minutes, but that would be a pretty good time to answer all these 6 questions. All right, then there was this last question here. This was completely theta question. And it on the face of it, it appeared like, hey, this was a Venn diagram for 5, because there was mention of math as a subject, physics as a subject, chemistry, biology, and English. Right? It appeared on the face of it like Venn diagram for 5, or I may have to arrange the data, organize the data for these 5 subjects. On the face of it, looked massive. But those who had sufficient exposure to Venn diagrams, the varieties again. So it's not about doing the Venn diagram for 2 or 3, not all, but the varieties, sometimes 4, and even within the 4, there are various varieties. Those who had that exposure to the varieties, I'm sure they would have rocked this particular section, but they rocked this particular set, but not a great set to do, for a simple reason. All 6 questions were theta questions. Therefore, I am not in favor of this particular set, for a simple reason that all 6 are theta questions. There is no reassurance on what numbers you are plugging in, or it might happen that you might be plugging you might be plugging wrong numbers for every question. That's quite possible in this, right? Therefore, naturally, unless somebody is super confident of handling a Venn diagram for 4 with a variation that is tending towards 5, this might not be a great set. I would rather suggest whatever you have done, take a look at the video solutions for these sets, probably uploaded by today, tomorrow. So take a look at the video solutions for some of these particular sets as to how one should have approached them. Okay, so that brings us to the understanding of these particular sets, what one should have done, what one shouldn't have done, right? And based on that, let's say that, okay, so what is kind of expected? Look, anybody getting an entry into this is a great thought at this point in time. If you are a beginner, and if you are kind of making an entry into this particular chart, as Shivam sir was mentioning, trust me, that's a good deal at this point in time. About 5-6 months to the exam season to commence, about 5 to 6 months, which is a good time. Still about 150, 180, 200 kind of days for various other exams. It's a good time to pick up from here, from the month of April, right, or end of April. So anybody into this 80 percentile bracket, have you been getting into this, right? You can pat your back, because yes, already anybody who made a cut into this, already, trust me, that's a good job. 80 percentile, just about 7 to 8 attempts. See, some people can get the same 17 marks here, but to get that 17 marks, they would have fought their way through, and they would have solved so many questions, got plenty wrong, and finally settled with a 17 score. That's also possible. At the same time, you can be judicious, right? You can handle the questions with greater, handle the question, handle the questions within the set, maybe 1 or 2 of them there, go to the next set, handle another 2, maintain a great accuracy. There are multiple ways to get the same score, 17, to make a cut into this 80 percentile, right? 90 percentile, about 21 marks, not really a big deal. Already, even somebody would have answered 7 questions right, all 7 attempted 7, got all 7 right, would have made a cut into the 90 percentile. Big deal, right? 90 is a good number to enter into, right? So therefore, if you look at this, you got to keep your calm, be composed, be in control, don't let go your control sense, like you are spreading your attention thin and you are panicking, trying to attempt too many questions, trying to make certain assumptions in between, getting anxious, getting frustrated. That's not the way to approach a particular section. All right, now read 2-3 sets, look already what you want to do. Even had you attempted about 2 or 3 sets with about 2-3 questions in each particular set, I'm sure you have made a cut into 90 percentile. Thereby, the rest of the scores follow, right? So 98 percentile can be taken as a good benchmark figure. So that even comes at a dozen question, answering about a dozen question. All right, if you are calm and you've got good practice, I'm sure as I put the timelines out there, most of the sets would have taken about 8 minutes, right? And you had about 40 minutes of this. Even if you say that 10 minutes was the planning time, that's a decision-making time is about 10 minutes across these 5 sets, which means about 2 minutes is the decision-making per set. I'm sure you would have got a good working time of about 30 minutes, right? So because in that 10 minutes, you would have decided what to do, what not to do. 30 minutes is a good time because the average time taken per set was about 8 minutes. All right, that's what we were discussing. So which implies you could have closed anywhere between 3 to 4 sets. Definitely you would have landed somewhere closer to the 98 percentile there. Right, yeah, 100 percentile was a big asking at 53. Reason being, those who are well versed with the logic, the sets here were quite manageable. There was not a single difficult set, right? Either they were moderate and time consuming or they were of the moderate difficulty level. Well prepared people might have definitely handled it better to get into 99 and 100 percentile. Okay, that's how this whole thing of DILR looks. Let's now look at how do I get the good overall percentile, right? Because this is section wise. What we learned so far is we started at VRC, which the ma'am have taken you through, then Shivam sir has taken you through, the QA I've taken you through, the DILR. Let's see how one can score a better overall, because even to get a better overall doesn't mean that you should be good in every single section. Right? It's not that to get an overall 98 percentile. Should I get 98 percentile in every single section? No. All right, because we would be good in some section, we might not be that great in some other section. You can always balance. As long as you make a cut into 80-85 percentile, you'd be clearing the sectional cutoff. Why we are targeting this 80 percentile? Reason being, most of the top B schools, right, including the top IIMs, would have 80 percentile as the sectional cutoff. Okay, by scoring 80 percentile in one particular section, will I be able to score 99 percentile overall? Of course, yes. You can do exceptionally well in the other 2 sections to get that kind of math done. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's take a look at how do I score a better overall percentile. Okay, if you take a look at, let's take one of the figures just to understand what I meant. Okay, let's take 95 percentile, for example, 95 percentile. Look, 95 percentile in overall look like 38. All right, you've got to look, sorry, to in VARC, to get 98 percentile, one should get 38. In DILR, one should get 27. Right, whereas in QA, one should get 33. If I add up these 3 numbers, assuming that you got 98, 95, 95, 95, add up these particular numbers, all right, that is becoming 98 marks, right? 33 plus 27, which is 60, 60 plus 38, which is 98. So should I be, if I get 98, trust me, all right, if you get 98, you'd be closer to 97.5 percentile, right? Or 97 or 97. So look at this. What is that 95 percentile overall requires 84. Assume that you are not so good, or you are not so good at DILR. You just clear the sectional cutoff. What is the sectional cutoff here? 70. Let's say 80 percentile is the sectional cutoff for some of the very good B schools. Let's assume here, right? And you still wanted 95 percentile because you want to get into a college like SPJ, whose cutoff is 95 percentile. Let's assume, right? Okay. Or MDI, whose overall percentile required could be 96 percentile or 97, somewhere around that. 95, let's take it as a 95. So I'm not good at DILR. So I'm good at the other 2, reasonably good at other 2 sections. Now let's assume. So you scored 33 already in QA. Let's say you scored 33 in QA, that is 95 percentile in QA. And in DILR, you scored bare minimum, which is 17. Let's assume that you scored 17. 33 plus 17, which becomes 50. 50 plus another 38, all right, which becomes 88, which is actually more than 84, which means you actually got 96 percentile. See, there is always a mix and match possible. When you think that overall I want a particular percentile, doesn't mean that one should be good in all 3 sections. It's okay to be reasonably good in two sections and not so good in another section. But not so good also implies that you should be scoring somewhere about 80%. If you keep calm and if you pick your battles, right, then you would be definitely, pick your battles means I mean pick your questions well, you should be able to get about, call it 95 or 98, whatever is the desired percentile. There is always a game plan behind it. Now think about it, somebody who wished to get about 98%, which is a cutoff for most of the top tier schools, right? If you kind of add up those particular numbers, right? Add up those particular numbers, add them up, all it becomes 41 plus 33, which is 74. 74 plus 30, 74 plus 38, right, which becomes, all right, now here it's somehow adding up to the same number, all right, surprisingly, but generally, all right, now it won't be the kind of the, okay, it is actually adding up to be 112 here, right, so 112, but all right, now, so here required for 98 is how much? 102. See, 41 plus 33 plus 38 is 112, but you need 102 to get 98%. In fact, 112 could be somewhere about 99.3%, right? So that's how the dynamics would change. Remember, to get the overall good percentile, you need not get a good percentile in each section, right? In one of them, you can just clear the cutoff. In the other two sections, if you score reasonably well, you can still do it. There is another way. So if you do exceptionally well in one of the sections, assume that, okay, your language skills are really good. You've been a good reader right from your childhood days. Your language skills are good. You can kind of score about 50 marks out there, right? So for example, if you want to get 98 percentile, hey, can I straight away score 50 marks from English? Possible, because your language skills are pretty good. So your target is 102 marks, let's say 98 percentile in this paper. So you might have scored 50 right from here, right? And then from the other two sections, you could have managed the remaining 50 marks, right? Which is quite possible from BA and LR and QA, right? You could have managed the remaining marks from there. That is also a way to handle this. There are multiple ways to handle the overall cutoff. So they don't panic, right? So develop your skills. And if you have one strength already in place, trust me, your half battle is won technically, right? If not so, develop reasonably now across the spectrum, develop the skills. So here we go. That is from our end on this particular EOM. I wish you the very best for the forthcoming test and your preparation. Thank you.